Hello and welcome to Weekly News Highlights. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. Let's recap the week with keywords that made headlines this week. The Trump administration's pressure on its trading partners continued this week, ahead of the upcoming reciprocal tariffs in April, calling South Korea a major trade deficit country, likely referring to non-tariff trade barriers. The U.S. Federal Reserve decided to hold its key interest rate steady between 4.25% and 4.5%, while projecting higher inflation and revising down the outlook for growth and employment, citing tariff uncertainties. And a bipartisan pension reform bill was approved by the National Assembly this week in what will be the first major change in nearly 2 decades. Both the premium and return rates will go up. It's been over 3 weeks since hearings for President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial wrapped up, and a ruling date is still up in the air, meaning that the ruling will happen next week. In the meantime, the impeachment verdict for Prime Minister Han Duck-soo will be delivered next Monday. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Almost a month has passed with no indication of when President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment verdict will be delivered. As of Friday, the Constitutional Court has not yet revealed when it will rule on the National Assembly's motion to remove Yoon from power, which was passed in December last year following the leader's controversial martial law. For more than 3 weeks, the justices have been convening almost daily to deliberate on the case, a record period of time compared to past presidential impeachments. It took at most 2 weeks for verdicts on former presidents Park Geun-hye and Roh Moo-hyun, but there has been no word from the court as of Friday, 24 days since Yoon's final trial hearing was held. Given that the Constitutional Court notified the former leaders 2 to 3 days in advance of their respective ruling dates, Yoon's verdict could fall between next Wednesday at the earliest and early April before 2 of the justices retire. The longer-than-expected deliberation has given rise to plenty of speculation over what's holding up the 8-member bench. Some believe the justices are working towards a unanimous decision to impeach President Yoon and are fine-tuning their positions to deliver an indisputable judgment, amid fears that the result may trigger extreme reactions from the public. Some speculate the bench are struggling to align their views, given how an earlier impeachment case of Korea Communications Commission Chair Lee Jin-suk was dismissed, as the justices' opinions were split evenly in line with their political orientations.
It seems the grounds for impeachment are clear, and it is hard to dispute the president's declaration of martial law was unconstitutional and unlawful. But the justices must determine whether the constitutional violations are severe enough to warrant removal from office. There may be justices who argue that it does not meet the threshold for an impeachable offense.
In any case, the justices are facing growing calls to make a swift decision as Yoon's prolonged suspension from office hinders effective governance.
This case is neither legally complex nor presents particularly difficult legal issues. We actually thought a conclusion would come by mid-March at the latest. The prolonged ruling has fueled speculation about political influence, but I believe the justices fully understand the gravity and urgency of this case. I don't expect it to be delayed until early April. I believe that by the end of March, the ruling will be delivered one way or another.
Still, the context of the decision and its timing is inevitably political. Those supporting Yoon's impeachment wish to quickly trigger a snap presidential election, which polls show would favor opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung. Meanwhile, conservatives, including Yoon's supporters, are calling for the case to be dismissed, or for the court to deliver a ruling after Lee Jae-myung's own verdict on Wednesday, March 26th, on one of his 5 criminal cases.
With pressure coming from every side, the court faces the challenge of ensuring its constitutional decision doesn't worsen the deep political division across society. If at least 6 justices agree to uphold impeachment, the president will be removed from office immediately, triggering an early presidential election that must be held within 60 days. If 3 or more justices are against impeachment, the president will resume his duties. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
A reform bill that would affect the lives of people paying into pensions in the country was approved this week upon bipartisan agreement. In what will be the first pension reform in almost 2 decades, workers will pay more and ultimately get more after they retire. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon explains.
Pay more and get more. On Thursday, the National Assembly passed a bill changing the national pension system that will raise the insurance premium to an eventual 13% over the next 8 years, while the nominal income replacement rate will be raised to 43% from the current 41.5 starting next year. This is a first reform in 18 years.
At a time of heightened tension and deep conflict, it was truly a valuable process for both the ruling and opposition parties to come together with a focus on the lives of the people. I believe this is a significant matter that will be greatly recorded in our political and social history.
In addition to this, the two parties agreed to give more credit months. Those who serve mandatory military service will now receive 12 additional months in their pension credit instead of 6. Women who give birth will also receive credits. For the first 2 children, it will be 12 months each, while starting from the 3rd child, it'll be 18 months.
It took 18 years for these new changes to the pension system because it's a sensitive issue that requires agreements across the aisle, generations, and working classes. But it's something that needs to be done as the fund will be depleted due to aging population and low birth rate.
The new changes, however, only push back the depletion time by 10 years to 2055. Because of this, more changes will be made and a special committee will be formed. The committee, chaired by the ruling People Power Party, will be made of 13 members, 6 from the PPP, 6 from the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea, and 1 from a minor party. The members will discuss structural reform issues, including the revision of the multi-layered income security system linked to pensions, such as basic, retirement, and private pensions, as well as financial stability concerns. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In line with widespread market expectations, the U.S. Federal Reserve has kept its lending rate steady while acknowledging uncertainty stemming from Trump's tariff policies. Our Lee Soo-jin tells us more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to once again keep its benchmark interest rate unchanged, but signal potential rate cuts in future meetings. In its second monetary policy meeting of the year on Wednesday, the central bank kept its key borrowing rate steady at its current range of 4.25% to 4.5%. The Federal Open Market Committee has put a pause in its rate-cutting cycle since December last year after carrying out 3 consecutive reductions. The decision comes as Federal Reserve officials lowered their outlook for economic growth for this year to 1.7% from 2.1% in their December projection.
Uncertainty today is unusually elevated. As the economy evolves, we will adjust our policy stance in a manner that best promotes our maximum employment and price stability goals.
The Fed's goals of maintaining maximum employment and low inflation are referred to as its dual mandate. Powell said that the uncertainty comes from the changes that policies, particularly trade, but also immigration, fiscal policy, and regulation, will bring to the economy. The rate-setting committee, which releases a summary of economic projections after its March, June, September, and December meetings, projected slightly higher unemployment of 4.4% from 4.3% by the end of the year. Inflation was also forecast to rise as personal consumption expenditure, a measure of consumer spending, and core inflation, which excludes energy and food prices, were both revised upward. Powell acknowledged that tariffs have already contributed to the rise in inflation. The Trump administration imposed 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports last Wednesday, triggering retaliatory tariffs from Canada and the EU, with reciprocal U.S. tariffs set for April 2nd. But with officials expecting the Fed to implement a total of 0.5 percentage point in rate cuts in 2025, 2 reductions are likely this year as rate cuts are typically in quarter-point increments. This latest decision keeps the interest rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. at 1.75 percentage points, with the Bank of Korea slashing its key interest rate to 2.75% in its last meeting in February. All 3 major U.S. stock indexes, the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and the Nasdaq, showed an upward trajectory following the Fed's decision. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs continue to grow, especially with reciprocal tariffs set to be announced on April 2nd. And South Korean officials are particularly on edge as the White House mentioned Korea as one of its major trade deficit countries ahead of the tariff announcement. For more, we have our Lee Soo-jin here in the studio to tell us more. Welcome back, Soo-jin.
Good to be here.
So Soo-jin, first off, walk us through what Trump has said about tariffs thus far.
Sure. So Trump has announced plans to impose reciprocal tariffs starting April 2nd, targeting countries that impose high tariffs against U.S. exports by assigning them each with a reciprocal tariff number. Here's what Trump said regarding his tariff plans.
Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them.
And this comes as Trump just last week imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports to the United States, applied worldwide without exceptions. While Canada, the largest supplier of steel and aluminum to the U.S., was expected to face the biggest impact as it accounts for 23% of total U.S. steel imports and about 60% of aluminum imports, South Korea was still significantly affected, ranking fourth in both categories. This ends South Korea's duty-free quota system for 2.63 million tons of steel products, which began in 2018, meaning that from now on, South Korean steel exports to the U.S. will be subject to standard tariffs. And the tariff on aluminum has also been increased from 10% to 25%.
So 2 weeks left until the announcement of the reciprocal tariff plans. Has there anything been said about what the U.S. is looking for in South Korea?
So nothing in detail has been said, but so far it doesn't seem to bode well for Korea. A top economic aide to the White House, U.S. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett told CNBC on Monday that trade deficits with Europe, China, and South Korea have persisted for years, claiming that deficits are attributable to the country's high tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers. And since South Korea and the U.S. have a free trade agreement that removes tariffs on most items, Hassett's statement is raising expectations of increased pressure on South Korea to lower non-tariff trade barriers. Let's take a listen to what an expert said.
The Trump administration is focused on fixing trade imbalances and seems to be taking a one-on-one approach with countries that have large trade deficits. For South Korea, this could mean either imposing tariffs to reduce imports or negotiating to lower barriers, so South Korea can import more from the U.S.
Soo-jin, this week, an official from the Trump administration has mentioned the so-called Dirty 15 partners. Tell us more about that.
Sure, so this Fox News interview has gained a lot of traction here in Korea as there is a possibility that Korea will be included in the Dirty 15. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Tuesday said that there was 15 nations, which he referred to as the Dirty 15, that are imposing substantial tariffs on the U.S. He did not clarify which nations were on this list, but Trump has previously highlighted South Korea as one of the countries that he claimed was unfairly benefiting from trade imbalances. South Korea's trade surplus with the U.S., which represents a trade deficit for the U.S., rose for 5 straight years to reach over $55 billion last year. Bessent also said that come April 2nd, each country will receive a specific reciprocal tariff number deemed fair by the U.S., and that Dirty 15 countries are likely to face higher tariffs due to perceived unfair trade practices. But again, we don't know the details as to what those numbers will look like yet, as they're still being calculated by the U.S. trade representatives and the U.S. Commerce Department.
Then, Soo-jin, how has the South Korean government responded, and what viable policies can be implemented to counter the Trump's tariff pressure?
Right, so despite the country currently facing a leadership vacuum, the government has been actively pursuing talks with high-ranking U.S. officials. Seoul's Industry Minister An Deok-gun arrived in Washington, D.C. on Friday and met with U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. Let's take a listen to what he said would be discussed.
The Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement has effectively eliminated tariffs between our two countries. However, non-tariff barriers have emerged as a concern. We are actively addressing these issues domestically and will communicate our progress to our U.S. counterparts.
Sujin, again, we are 2 weeks away from the reciprocal tariffs to take effect starting in April. We'll keep a close eye on it. Thank you so much for the coverage today.
Thank you for having me.
And trade tensions and uncertainties are already being reflected in global growth prospects. Steering through uncertainty is what the OECD is calling the current global economic situation, projecting a gradual slowdown in global economic growth over the next 3 years. Its interim economic outlook published on Monday said that the global economic growth will be moderate, projecting figures of 3.1% for 2025 and 3% for 2026. Notably, the growth forecast for this year has been revised downwards by 0.2 percentage points compared to the previous projection given in December last year. Now, significant changes in trade policies were outlined as a critical concern as the Trump administration rolls out sweeping tariffs, warning that these shifts could impede economic growth and contribute to rising inflation. Now, by country in the U.S., growth is projected to slow due to the implementation of increased tariffs, with a forecast of 2.2% this year, with China's economy expected to maintain relatively robust growth, with forecasts of 4.8% in 2025. Now, as for the South Korean economy, it's projected to grow at a subdued pace of 1.5% this year and 2.2% next year. Going forward, the OECD's policy recommendations advise central banks to navigate potential increases in trade costs and has called for international cooperation to address trade concerns, structural reforms to promote competition, and support for growth and productivity through the integration of artificial intelligence technologies. Talks on Washington's proposal for a partial ceasefire in Ukraine will resume on Monday in Saudi Arabia, while U.S. President Donald Trump says his country will sign a minerals deal with Ukraine soon. Our Lee Seung-jae has this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Thursday that a minerals and natural resource deal with Ukraine is getting closer. Trump made the announcement at the White House after signing an order to increase U.S. production of critical minerals.
We're doing very well with regard to Ukraine and Russia. And one of the things we are doing is signing a deal very shortly with respect to rare earths with Ukraine, which they have tremendous value in rare earth, and we appreciate that.
Washington and Kyiv said earlier this month that they had agreed to conclude the minerals deal as soon as possible. The comments by Trump also come as he spoke with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Wednesday in what the White House said was a fantastic one-hour phone call. President Trump also said Thursday that progress towards a ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine is progressing well.
And we spoke yesterday with, as you know, President Putin and President Zelensky, and we would love to see that come to an end, and I think we're doing pretty well in that regard. So hopefully we could save thousands of people a week from dying. That's what it's all about. They're dying.
Meanwhile, officials from the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine will head to Saudi Arabia next week to hold talks on a potential ceasefire deal. Talks on a U.S.-led proposal for a partial ceasefire will resume next Monday, with Russian and Ukrainian officials holding talks separately with U.S. officials. According to President Zelensky speaking at a news conference in Oslo on Thursday, U.S. officials would meet with Ukrainian experts and then hold separate talks with Russian representatives. The White House issued a statement saying that President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin had agreed to technical negotiations on a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea and a potential full ceasefire and permanent peace during their talks on Tuesday. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
An annual medical conference took place here in the country with a showcase of how healthcare taps into AI, as well as a growing international recognition in the industry. Our An Sung-jin tells us more.
AI and healthcare. The combination of these is going beyond implementation as companies seek to weave them into our daily lives. South Korea's Health Ministry and the Korea Health Industry Development Institute are hosting the annual Medical Korea Conference to connect those in the field and promote discussions on the implications of this. With the need for more healthcare workers and an aging population, AI integration into people's daily lives has become inevitable, and an expert says this is not as a replacement, but as a helper.
There's no doubt that AI is here to stay in the medical industry. The people who are concerned or worried about AI are going to struggle in the future as AI becomes more and more intercalated into everything that we do.
Alongside the use of smart technology in our everyday lives, Korea is also promoting medical tourism, welcoming those seeking K-beauty healthcare.
An increase in the number of patients visiting Korea for medical purposes implies that not only is our medical technology acknowledged worldwide, but also suggests that we are becoming a focal point for medical tourism in Asia.
As Korea receives more international recognition, medical tourists continue to increase, with the number soon to exceed 1 million. Many Korean companies in the beauty and medical industry are here to showcase their latest trends, as well as to network and find partners. With more tourists spending on healthcare and reinvigorating the economy, companies are aiming to increase their competitiveness in the field.
Due to Hallyu, Korean healthcare products are garnering more attention, and I hope to share this worldwide.
As the country steps up as a medical powerhouse, efforts from stakeholders are set to become more apparent. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Korean historical art treasures are being showcased at Germany's 400-year-old Dresden Royal Palace. This large-scale exhibition, the first of its kind in Germany in 25 years, is also being held in collaboration with the Dresden State Art Collections. Our culture correspondent Song Yujin takes us there.
This gold crown and belt from Korea's 5th century Silla dynasty are making a rare visit to Germany for the first time in over 60 years. These national treasures are part of the 100 Ideas of Happiness, or Treasures from Korea, an exhibition at Dresden Royal Palace, a result of years of collaboration between the National Museum of Korea and Städtischen Kunstsammlungen Dresden, one of the most prestigious museum networks in the world. The partnership began in 2017 when SKD showcased its prize collections to Korea. Now, the favor is being returned with over 180 objects spanning from the Three Kingdoms period to the Joseon dynasty making their way to Germany. Claudia Brink and Pek Sojin are the curators.
We start with works coming from the 5th and 6th century up to the 19th and 20th century, and also lots of genres. So we have sculpture, we have metalwork, goldsmith work, precious objects, paintings, calligraphy. From my field, that this opportunity to present the Korean heritage in this volume, it's impossible. I mean, we had this kind of like a comparable side of exhibition in 1999 in Essen, and that was kind of like the last biggest exhibition in Germany.
Though these artifacts differ in shape, size, and era, they share a common theme: happiness.
Figurative earthenware from the Three Kingdoms period reflects wishes for a good afterlife. The Korean folding screen from the Grazi Museum of Ethnology in Leipzig, 100 Signs of Happiness in Long Life, captures traditional Korean ideas of joy and fortune. We wanted to introduce Korean cultural heritage and also share a message of hope and resilience.
This isn't just East meets West. It's a bridge between cultures told through a story that never gets old. And in times like these, who couldn't use a little extra happiness? Song Yujin, Arirang News.
South Korea is the global powerhouse of eSports, and its universities are now hoping to play a part in nurturing some of the country's future stars. Our Iuni has the details.
At first glance, students playing esports games may seem like they're just having fun. But this is actually part of a university course.
Above all, understanding games is essential. This is a game practice room, something you don't typically find at regular universities. Many students have once dreamed of becoming professional esports players, but as they dive deeper into the world of gaming, they realize that success in esports comes in many forms.
I started playing the game League of Legends in high school, and I ranked 33rd in the country at the highest challenger level. I received pro offers and joined a training academy, but soon realized how competitive the scene was. So I decided to pursue a related career and become a game analyst and tournament organizer.
Many South Korean universities are turning gaming into an academic and professional field, opening doors to a variety of careers. As esports gains popularity, many players invest significant time and effort, but never reach the pro level. However, education in this field can open new opportunities for them. Most importantly, it can provide a fresh start for pro gamers who are often known for having short career spans. Behind esports star players and tournaments, key roles include global event organizers, content marketers, team coaches, and media professionals who share players' performances with the public.
Our curriculum trains students to become professionals in areas such as planning and organizing esports tournaments, as well as game programming for gaming companies.
I chose to pursue a degree in esports because I love it, and I feel it suits my strength. Also, I believe it's a growing industry.
Dongyang University's campus, located just outside of Seoul, is home to the first 4-year esports program in the metropolitan area, while many other universities are also embracing the growing esports industry by offering training for talented individuals. 이은희, Arirang News.
That wraps up this week's weekly news highlights. Thank you so much for staying with us and have a wonderful day wherever you are.